Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, OP met his girlfriend 3 years ago, quickly falling in love and starting a successful dropshipping business together. However, he discovered she was cheating on him. He ended the relationship, cut her out of the business, and exposed her affair. Later, she begged for a second chance, but he refused. Now, let's get into the story. A 29 male met my girlfriend, 26 female, 3 years ago at a cafe. I thought she was cute, so I got her number, and we went out later that week. We had an awesome time, and from there our relationship flourished. It wasn't long before she and I were official, and she moved in with me. We were very in love, and we moved very quickly with everything. She was someone that I thought I was going to propose to at one point. Neither of us had the best jobs in the world. We would constantly complain about how we were being walked all over by our employers, and that we worked with incompetent coworkers. We both wanted out of those jobs, but the job market being like it is was pretty scary. I've always enjoyed drawing and making art. Unfortunately, my parents wouldn't pay for me to go to art school, so it was only a hobby that I could never turn into a career. My girlfriend was really supportive about it when she saw my work. About a year into our relationship, she saw a video online about things people can do as side hustles. One of the big ones was for dropshipping t-shirts and things like that. She told me about it, and it seemed like an interesting idea, though I didn't know how feasible it would be since there were probably hundreds of shops online already. She did a lot of research, and eventually, she convinced me to give it a try. It cost us virtually nothing to get started, so there wasn't much risk involved. I put my own personal art projects to the side for a little while, and I made some designs based on pop culture and fandom stuff to put on prints and t-shirts. It took a few weeks for us to really start getting any traction, but after our first couple of orders and some positive reviews, we started to build a pretty solid foundation for a business. At about 6 months of being open, we started to make a pretty good amount of money from it. We thought that it might even be possible to do that full-time in the future. The only thing we were really handling was the marketing and designs. The printers were doing everything else. So, our business was thriving, and I thought we were too. My girlfriend was managing everything and giving me different things I should be making designs for so we could keep adding new inventory. I was kind of frustrated because I was really doing all of the work. All she was doing some brief research on things that were popular and leaving everything else to me. We weren't married, so all of the income wasn't shared. We were splitting it 50-50, and I didn't think that was fair. I confronted her about that one day, and she got really mad at me for suggesting we alter the payments. I explained my side to her, and she ended up storming out of the house to spend the night with her friend. She hadn't been answering any of my phone calls, so I called the friend that I assumed she was with, and she told me she wasn't there. I was a little confused, but I rationalized it as thinking that her friend was lying on her behalf. I kind of just assumed that she didn't want to talk to me at the time. I sent a bunch of text messages apologizing and asking her to come home so we could continue talking about it together. Her running away at the first sight of conflict between us was already a pretty big red flag for me. She never responded to the messages, but she came home the following evening. When I asked her about where she was, she told me that she was with a friend that I had called. Again, I thought that she told her friend to lie about her whereabouts. I didn't disbelieve her when she told me that. We sat down and had a conversation about everything, and we agreed that I would get 10% more of the funds that I was currently getting. Still, I wasn't happy with that compromise, but I didn't want to argue about it if it meant possibly losing her. A few weeks went by after that argument, and things started to seem off with her. I would come home, and she wouldn't be there. Whenever we would have time together, she would be more focused on her phone than me. It seemed like she was disinterested in being with me altogether. I felt pretty self-conscious about everything after that. I kind of rationalized it in my head as she didn't like me anymore and it hurt. At the same time, the business started doing very well. We were getting dozens of orders every day, and we were raking in the money. We both ended up quitting our jobs to focus on that since we didn't need our crappy day jobs anymore. Everything would have been perfect in my life had it not been for how my girlfriend was acting. I hadn't noticed her behavior was different before we both quit our jobs, but after it was apparent there was something going on. One of the big reasons I could tell was because my girlfriend was out of the apartment a lot. She didn't have a job to go to, so I wasn't sure exactly where she was going. I would expect her to tell me if she was going out just to meet a friend. She would come back a couple of hours later and tell me that she just went for a walk. That wasn't an impossible answer, but she had never really been the type of person to just go take leisurely strolls. I was getting really suspicious that she might have had something going on the side. We had a Ring doorbell set up, so I normally get notifications when she would go in and out. I didn't always get them because my phone was usually on silent, so after I started suspecting something, I made sure to leave the volume on. One afternoon while I was in my office working on a design, I heard it go off. I quickly checked, and it was her leaving. I threw my shoes on, and I followed her to see where she was going. I walked behind her for about 15 minutes when she approached a house. It wasn't one that I had ever been to with her. We introduced each other to all of our friends and family already, so I thought I would have recognized the house if she was visiting a friend. A man opened the door, and he kissed her before picking her up and bringing her inside. Putting the pieces together about what was going on didn't take long. Obviously, she was sleeping with that man. It made sense in hindsight. She was with him, so she didn't need to sleep with me anymore. I was completely heartbroken as I walked home. I had my suspicions, but I hoped that I was wrong. It was the last thing that I wanted to find out. I truly love my girlfriend, and I planned on marrying her in the future. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table for about half an hour thinking about what I should do. I considered confronting her when she eventually came in and telling her that I knew about the man she was with. The more I thought about it, the more I wanted to know who he was and how long it had been going on. I grabbed her laptop and logged in to try and find some more information. When I checked her emails, I found some correspondence between both of them. From what I could gather, they met at a local business ownership and entrepreneur organization. I remember my girlfriend telling me she was going to a meeting to try and pick up some tips on how to properly run a business. It made sense that they met there. That was shortly after we started our business together. Their messages were friendly at first, and there wasn't anything alarming about them. But then the man confessed that he only got her information because he thought she was attractive. My girlfriend joked back and said that she only gave it to him because she thought the same. They started flirting and bantering back and forth. Then my girlfriend confessed to him that she was in a relationship. The man said that he didn't care. He liked her and he could tell that she liked him as well. He promised her that he could keep a secret. They made a plan to meet up after that, and from there all of the messages were very sexual. They were obviously getting together for intimate quite frequently. My girlfriend would tell him that she wanted to stop by his house after work, and after quitting her job that wasn't feasible. So that's when the long walk started. I had no intention of trying to salvage my relationship with her. I wanted everything to be over. Before my girlfriend got home from her walk, I packed a few bags, and I went to stay with a friend of mine to avoid her. I told them about what was going on and about how complicated it was because we were running a business together. My friend then asked me a bunch of questions about the paperwork that had been signed and things like that to see if there were any grounds for me to kick her out of the business accounts. I told him that we never signed papers. Everything was a verbal agreement between us of the work. He thought that it would be within my right to either change all the passwords on the business accounts or pull all of my designs and start a brand new account with them. I slept on that idea overnight to think of which option would be better because I was for sure not going to let my girlfriend cheat on me and then benefit from my work. I also started to think of ways that I could ruin the man she was sleeping with. He knew that she was in a relationship and he pursued her anyway. That was just disgusting. From their messages, I knew that he owned and operated a small shop in the center of town. We lived in a pretty small town and it was very religious. The kind of town where everybody was in church on Sunday, and if you weren't, people would be knocking on your door to make sure you're okay. Adultery would be very frowned upon in this community. I printed out some of the email exchanges between them, specifically ones where he mentioned not caring that my girlfriend was in a relationship. I went to his store and plastered the images all over the outside. I ended up changing all of the passwords on the business account so my girlfriend couldn't get in. I removed all of her banking information from the accounts as well. Before she noticed anything was going on, she texted me and asked me why I changed the passwords. I didn't respond right away, but then she kept calling me and messaging me telling me that she needed to get into the accounts. It was Friday after all, and I knew she was going to pay herself. My friend helped me draft an email to send to her where I explained how I knew everything and that I didn't want to be in business with somebody who proved themselves to be untrustworthy and a liar. Because all of the money we were making was based on my designs, I was pulling them and going to start my own business. I changed the password so she wouldn't have access to anything while I was doing that. She tried calling me and explaining that I misunderstood what was happening, but I just told her I found the emails and I knew she was lying. I told her that she needed to get out of my house because she wasn't on any sort of lease living there. If she wasn't out within 3 days, I planned on having the police escort her off the premises. When I went back home after 3 days, I saw that she trashed my office. She knocked over my computer and she ripped a couple of my paintings. If she thought I wasn't going to sue her over that, she was sorely mistaken. I ended up winning our case, and she was forced to pay me for the damages out of the little money she still had in her account before I'd essentially cut her off. As for the man she was sleeping with, his business was definitely hurt when the people of the community found out what he had done. The good Christians of our community didn't want to support someone who knowingly got involved with someone in a relationship. My girlfriend ended up staying with him for a few weeks after she left my house. I guess they tried to continue a relationship together, but he ended up cheating on her with one of his employees. Boys, so that didn't last very long. I actually found out about that because she called me and told me, begging for me to give her a second chance. I told her that there was no way in hell that I would allow that to happen and hung up on her. I have no idea what she's up to now. Today's second story. In this story, OP and his wife had a strong relationship built on mutual interests and family acceptance. Despite their commitment, the wife cheated while the user was away, leading to a confrontation and eventual divorce. He publicly criticized her actions, damaging her reputation and career. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I met in Savannah, where we both attended college in very different fields. She was going for script writing, and I studied archaeology. The first date went well enough that we continued seeing each other, and the more we did, the more we realized just how perfect we were for each other. She was a little geeky, very feminine, and very good at communicating. When we first dated, we went out together weekly for trivia night at our favorite place and saw each other any chance we got during the week. Before her third year in school started, she moved in with her mom to save money because living on campus wasn't the best financial decision. From the first time I met her mom over dinner, she loved me. So did her sister and nieces. They all accepted me as if I was always part of the family. I had a job lined up as an archaeologist as soon as I graduated. My wife had a little trouble finding a job with her degree, so she started writing scripts to submit to several streaming services and channel networks. None of those panned out. Meanwhile, I proposed and we moved into the house I bought. Regardless of her income, I knew I wanted to marry her. As my wife, she continued writing for about a year, but after that she caved in and got a job as a receptionist at a nonprofit organization. I told her she didn't have to work a job she didn't like, but she promised she wanted to do it because sitting at home wasn't cutting it for her. That job lasted a total of 15 months before she quit and started her own home business. She started offering tarot card readings and selling little trinkets she made out of epoxy. Every Saturday, she went to the market with a cart full of her art projects to set up at a table. She decorated to look pretty inviting and mysterious. I was surprised at how much money she managed to pull in from doing this. As an archaeologist, I had to travel for work. I would be home for about 2 weeks at a time, then leave for up to 6 weeks at a time. The longest it ever was, which I didn't think was that bad. Sure, I missed the intimacy with my wife, but that's what makes marriage so sacred. You wait and remain loyal to your spouse, no matter what life throws at you. And when you reunite, It's the most rewarding relationship experience. I returned from a 6-week trip at one point, and after we had wonderful reunion intimacy, it seemed like something was bothering my wife. It was like she wanted to say something to me, but wasn't sure how I'd take it. As we sat watching a movie, she clung to her phone, and I could feel her heartbeat racing. I finally paused it and confronted her, saying it was obvious something was on her mind. She swallowed hard and started to cry. She admitted she'd met someone at the market that she really enjoyed talking to. She said she wanted to consider being a life coach to said person, but she wasn't sure how I'd feel about her talking to him every day. I asked her if I could read what they had said to each other so far, so she gave me her phone after she scrolled up on the messages. There wasn't much that screamed infidelity to me. She just asked him how he was handling the move, and reminded him that while having to relocate your family is a huge pain-in-life obstacle, it isn't the end of the world and he didn't have to feel trapped. We all have the free will to do whatever we feel like. Up to and including buying AI. Told her it was fine for her to coach people and have friends. I just wanted to know the first names of the people she talked to, and made it clear that I trusted her not to start an affair or behave inappropriately with anyone. She was accepting of my terms, but I did notice a little disappointment in her. Not enough that I could say anything she would have denied it. Half a year passed without an incident or any trouble in our relationship. While I was away, working in Tennessee, my wife called me one evening as I laid in my hotel bed. She was crying, saying she needed to ask me a question that had been on her mind for some time. I told her to ask away, and that I wouldn't be mad at her just for asking a question. She asked me if I wanted to sleep with other women whenever I went on a work trip. I told her no, absolutely not. I never felt the need to sleep with a woman I didn't love or commit my life to. I would wait as long as it took to sleep with her because she was my everything. She was surprised but seemed comforted. She told me if I ever did want to, I could tell her and she wouldn't be mad. I told her she didn't need to worry about it because it never crossed my mind. I reminded her that when I chose to get married, I made her my one and only for the rest of my life. As much as I would be an archaeologist for the rest of my life, I told her I never wanted anything to come between us, and that sleeping with other people was just a recipe for disaster that could lead to jealousy, problems, and divorce. She agreed with me and seemed to feel much better. She told me she loved me with all her heart and wanted to be my good, loyal wife for life. With that, we said goodnight. The next morning is when my gut started twisting and knotting. I didn't know what was going on at first. I honestly considered food poisoning as a possibility, but after giving it a moment's thought, I realized I wasn't sure I could trust my wife. She never asked me if she could sleep with someone else, but she kind of went around that question by asking me if I wanted to. I decided to go home early, even though my request was denied. I was risking my whole job to drive back home before I was scheduled to leave. After hours of worried driving, I arrived home to find my wife's car in the driveway and no suspicious activity. I was relieved, but that was short-lived. As soon as I unlocked the front door, I heard sounds coming from our bedroom. I raced to it to find my wife having intimate with another man. When she saw me standing in the doorway, she screamed. I yelled for AP to get out of my house, which she did after scooping up his clothes. I just stared at my wife in disbelief for a few seconds, before reminding her that I had just told her how much. I didn't want either of us to sleep with other people and how bad it would be for our relationship. She just whined and asked me what she was supposed to do when most of her life was spent waiting for me to love her instead of actively loving her. I told her she should do what any normal person has to do when they don't have access to a lover. Not meet some stranger and decide to take him to her marital home to have an intimate while her husband was out working. I told her this went against everything marriage stood for, and that whatever fantasy she had about an open relationship wasn't going to happen with me. I demanded a wife in all senses of the word. She was on her knees, crying her eyes out, begging me with cupped hands to forgive her. She blamed herself for talking to other women about her situation and listening to them when they told her to do whatever she felt was right. I was beside myself. I couldn't believe that even though I was totally clear about how I felt about an open relationship, she still went and talked to other women who encouraged her to give in to temptation and betray her vows. She cheated on me. She kept me in the dark, and I still caught her sleeping with him. I told her to get out. She told me she didn't know where to go. I told her I didn't care. I knew she had family and friends that wouldn't let her spend a night outside, so I told her to go to one of their houses. She wouldn't move. All she did was sit in the hallway, making all kinds of remorseful noises. Whenever she thought of something specific, she'd start sobbing all over again. I ignored her as best I could, locking myself in the spare room. As annoying as it is, I was forced to stand my ground and share the house with her, until she was ordered to vacate by the court when our divorce was final. While we lived separately under the same roof, I posted daily to social media about what she'd done, tagging all her profiles and business accounts to it. I commented on the pictures of her tarot table set up, making smart remarks that questioned her ability to even see her own future downfall. This definitely impacted her reputation. A lot of would-be customers took one look at her social media accounts and found at least one of my comments. It was enough that she lost all motivation to do it. She didn't even try getting a job in her degree field again. My testimony, along with the phone records I requested, were enough to avoid alimony payments. So, without any life prospects or motivation, my divorced ex moved back in with her mother, sister, and nieces. She's basically back to where she was in high school, except much older and sadder.